Okay, here we go with chapter 9, lifespan development. I wonder what you folks thought about this chapter. I decided to show you this message right here. Keep this in mind, right? Because right about now, people start getting kind of tired. Uh, I hope you like this chapter. I always say that this chapter is the story of my life. I like it so much, I've actually given it a nickname, Womb to Tomb. From the very beginning of our existence to the very end of our existence. And I often wonder, like, what's gone on in my development to make me the person that I am? And then you should be asking yourself the same question. What sort of things have happened that molded you and shaped you? When we get to talk about personality, we revisit this whole issue. For example, this shirt that I'm wearing, Detroit versus everybody. That's a reflection of my development, right? So let's get into some specifics. But before we do so, here's some art here. This guy's collecting. There's been some, and he's a little hyperactive there, no doubt about that. There's been some research that approximately, close to 70% of people who are asking for money out in the streets, not asking for the kids or to pay bills or they're hungry, usually for drugs, alcohol, things of that nature. I don't give money anymore. I will provide meals and sometimes the clothes off my back, so to speak. This is what happens when the boy brought up by wolves meets the boy brought up by raccoons, right? And early experience affects us later in life. The cool thing about this chapter is we already know it. We're living it, we're going through it, we've yet to experience it. I know my son, Joaquin, when he was young, I was pushing him in a stroller, and I told the guy next to me, I said, "Man, I wish I had somebody push me around a little bit." And he said, "Wait a couple years." I wasn't laughing. I wasn't laughing. You recognize any of these toys? This is kind of before your time. Some of you might have seen these toys. We've got the Cabbage Patch Kid. We've got the Care Bears. We got He-Man. Some of the stuff is coming back, right? I want to talk about my first case study, and it's about what I call Toy Story. Not the movie, although the movie was really good, the first one. And then they said they were going to make a second one. I said, don't do it, because the second movie is usually pretty bad. And it was good. And then they said a third one. I said, oh, no, 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 no. Come on. You end on a good note. You already got it going with this Toy Story. And the third one, oh my gosh, Niagara Falls. And then the fourth one, that was pretty good too. So hopefully they'll just leave it be now at this point, but one never knows. Did you have an object that was important to you growing up? It might have been a toy. It might have been something that somebody gave you. It could have been a blanket. Think about that object. Here's one of my objects. My parents were not afraid of gender colors because they gave me, and by the way, I stuffed them with crew of the Starship Enterprise. Um, they gave me a pink Tonka Jeep, which I still have to this day. And maybe that's why to this day I'm not all bent out of shape when it comes to the colors I wear or other people wear. I just feel like colors don't really belong to one gender or the other. But the toy I really wanted to talk about was this toy. It is a 1964 Ford T-Bird, and T-Bird stands for Thunderbird. It is made by the Ichigo Company in Japan, and it's considered today to be a tin toy. The Japanese tin toys are pretty desirable. Here's the actual car right here, so you can get a perspective of how big it is and how tall it is. I stuck a little mini G.I. Joe in there, which I had the bigger versions when I was a kid, but they're long gone. My father came home one day and brought these to us new in the box and gave them to his sons. Now, it wasn't our birthday. We weren't particularly good that day, and we were a little confused. Like, my father would bring us toys from time to time, and most of the time they were used. They were from the secondhand store, Salvation Army, places like that. But he seldom brought us new stuff, especially when it wasn't a special occasion. And we didn't care. We just started to play with it. Now, my brother, one of my brothers, uh, he immediately went and put his away, and he came back and he said, "Let's play with your car." He later went on to become an antique dealer and a toy collector, right? So even as a young kid, he could see the future. As a matter of fact, a few years ago, I asked him, "Do you still have that T-bird that Dad gave us?" He says, "Yeah, it's still mint in the box. It was bought from Sears. I know exactly how much Dad paid for them." Right? Mine is not mint in a box. You can see it's been played with. It's not in the best condition. But what's cool about this car is it's got real rubber tires. It's a friction toy, so it makes a little bit of a noise. If you notice in the back, it's got a couple knobs. And when you turn one knob, I don't know if you can see there or not, but the windows on both sides go up and down, right? And if you turn the other knob, the hard top turns it into a convertible. How cool is that? So, all the times I've moved, I always took this car with me. A lot of stuff comes and goes in my life. But this car, I made sure I pack with me the multiple places I've lived in and the 2 states I've lived in. It's one of the few things that my father gave me. And a couple years ago, I started wondering what possessed him to do that. So I started thinking. When my family immigrated from Texas to Detroit, Michigan, where I was born, the primary reason my father came to Detroit was to work in the factories. And one of the factories he worked in was River Rouge. I have a photograph of what the factory looked like. It was a huge city in itself. It actually made cars from scratch. I mean, literally from the tires to the engines to the bodies, all in one factory and assembled it there. As a matter of fact, when Diego Rivera, great Mexican painter, came to Detroit and painted a mural at the Detroit Institute of Arts, he went to Detroit to River Rouge to sketch some of the machines and the people that work there, right? So I think what happened was my father was walking through Sears. He sees this 1964 Ford T-Bird on the shelf, and he thinks to himself, "Oh my goodness, I helped make that car. I'm going to buy that as a memento so my sons can have a memory of what I did." So he's not around for me to confirm that story, but I think that's why he gave it to us. So sometimes objects are really important to us because they represent more than just an item. They represent a person, a memory. That's why I asked you to think about your objects that you may have or maybe don't have anymore that were important to you. Yeah, that's my toy story, my personal toy story. Let's talk about things that can mess development up. Teratogens. Now, teratogens really sound like some kind of weird alien invasion, right? The teratogens are coming. Well, teratogens typically are found right underneath our sink. I have this rule about bugs in my house. I don't mind bugs being outside because that's their domain, right? That's where they live, and that's where they thrive, and so forth. But once they come in the house, I ask them, "Can you please leave?" They usually just ignore me, talk to the antennae, that kind of thing. So I bust out the bottle of Windex. And when they land on the window or they're close to the window, I'll give it a little squirt and they go tumbling down. right? And I also get a clean window out of it. And I think, wow, that Windex really worked good on that bug. It's not even bug spray, it's Windex, and I cleaned the window. And I think it just annihilated that bug. I wonder what it's doing to me, right? I wonder what it's doing to me. Now, the second image I want to show you involves some sex. So if this is potentially disturbing, you might want to pause it, fast forward a little bit, cover up the screen. If there's anybody around, you might want to block their eyes if they're sensitive to it. I don't want to shock people in advance. Okay, here it is. What we have here, I know some of you are dramatically disappointed. What we have here is the ovum surrounded by approximately 1,000 viable sperm knocking on the door. Now, what's interesting is the journey started with approximately 100 plus million of sperm looking their way to find the ovum, but some get lost, some are male, so they don't ask for directions. Some are misshapen. Nobody wants a blockhead, right? And so we're down to 1,000. And then here is the moment of fertilization, right? And then we start to develop. I don't know if you had a nickname. My nickname, my father called me, was Jeep. And for the longest time, I couldn't figure out why did he call me Jeep? I do like Jeeps. You know, he gave me a Jeep. Then I thought, my initials, JP. It takes a while. Take a look at these images that could be you, right? This image here looks like you're the blob. Here you look like a shrimp. Here it looks like you had too much hot sauce right there. Here's a picture that could be you, a bad burrito. And here you are with a magic cord, right? Cord that was feeding you and sending out waste. Life was good. Here's a picture of you before you came out in this complicated world of chapter notes, papers, exams. Whew. Life was good back then. And here's your development stages, right? And you start off in this little position right here, which was your favorite position because you had been used to it. And then as you got older, you could lift that enormous head, that's a compliment, of yours. Lift up your chest a little bit with a little help from your friends. Sit up. Now sitting up by yourself. Starting to make your way around the world. Crawling with a little help from your friends. Walking. Standing. Toddlers. That's why I like to call them kind of like Frankenstein and they're toddlers because if you recall, Frankenstein, here's Frankenstein right here, Frankenstein's monster kind of walks like a toddler, right? And then finally you can walk freely. And you know, today we can't really tell who the early walkers and who the late walkers are, right? Because most kids, they don't all develop in the same time frame, but most kids catch up and you can't really tell. Unless you're late for class all the time, then maybe you're a slow walker, right? So here are some of the milestones, you know, turning over, sitting up, scooting around, walking. Look at this kid. Here's Pedrosa's tip for the day. If you're going to go to a little kid's birthday party soon, consider buying wooden blocks. They're educational, letters, numbers, shapes, colors. Kids like building things. Other kids like destroying things, right? Think Godzilla, right? Destroying things, knocking things down. They last a long time, and you'll get your money's worth out of them. All right, we're going to continue with Chapter 9 next time. Thank you for your time and attention.